Well, we are back in the book of Revelation this week. After quite a long hiatus, we took a pause in November, and we're back to it now. And I I thought about doing this message on or in Revelation chapter 6 back in November, and then pausing, but really felt like it was so important that we take this and then immediately are able to jump into the next passages, the next messages. And the reason is because this is so vital to start right. If we don't start right here in chapter 6, we can get way off course. And frankly, a lot of people do. They get chapter 6 wrong, and they really kind of mess up the interpretation of Jesus that we find here in this passage. And as they do that, then it just sends them down this very divergent path. And so it's like, well, so we've got to make sure we start well here. So I should warn you that for my church, what I did before I began teaching, before I read the passage, I handed out notebooks for everybody. So we need to make sure that we have something to write down, some notes, because what we're going to talk about here it all connects to stuff we're going to be talking about for the next, frankly, the next few months. And so we need to make sure we're taking notes also, so they could write down any questions they might have. We always have a time of conversation after the message itself, and so I wanted to make sure that people had the opportunity to write those things down in order to prepare for the conversation that was coming. So I'll say the same to you. If you are a note-taking person and you're going to follow this journey as we go through Revelation, I would encourage you to take some notes, to think about some things, to process some things. We can have conversations about it within the comment section, either on Facebook or on YouTube. Feel free to do that. Or if you're in the area, come join us next week as we continue this journey. But let's do Revelation 6. I'm going to read the whole chapter. You'll note that as I teach in a little bit, I'm not covering a lot of the details. I'm not trying to cover a lot of the details. I'm trying to kind of get a broader vision of what we have in Revelation. Matter of fact, I want to talk to you before I even read. I want to show you something. I want to talk about this thing called a Rorschach test. Do you know what a Rorschach test is? A Rorschach test it's ink blots that are in a certain pattern, and what it does is, as you look at it, what you see in the picture, um, that's supposed to tell you something about you rather than something about the image itself. The first place, it's kind of funny, the first place I heard about the Rorschach test was as a kid when I was watching Batman, or as a teenager or whatever it was when I watched Batman. And Batman, he's Bruce Wayne at the time, of course, the alter ego, right? He's Bruce Wayne, and he sees an ink blot, and it's a picture that looks like a bat, and he says to the woman he's having a conversation with, he says, "Oh, you're fascinated with bats," or something like that. And she says, "Well, actually, this is a Rorschach test, and what you see in the image says something about you. So really, your interest, what's your interest in bats?" And so that was kind of the idea. And so I actually printed out. I'll see if I can show it here. This is a Rorschach test. I might have it upside down. I don't remember. But this is a Rorschach test. And so the question is, what do you see in the image? Revelation, the book of Revelation as a whole, it's a Rorschach test. It's what you come away with as you read Revelation tells us a lot about what we actually think about Jesus. Like, what do I think about Jesus? What do I think about the Lamb who was slain? And what do I think that his intentions and his heart? What do I think about all of that? And so we'll see what that means here in a little bit. We'll talk about that some more as we go. Let me read to you Revelation chapter 6, and then we'll dive in. Then I saw the Lamb open one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there was a white horse. Its rider held a bow. A crown was given to him, and he went out as a conqueror in order to conquer. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another voice went out, a fiery red one, and its rider was allowed to take peace from the earth, so that people would slaughter one another, and a large sword was given to him. And he opened the third seal. I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and there was a black horse. Its rider held a set of scales in his hand. Then I heard something like a voice among the four living creatures say, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not harm the oil and the wine." When he opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and there was a pale green horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following after him. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth, to kill by the sword, by famine, by plague, and by the wild animals of the earth. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been slaughtered because of the word of God and the testimony they had been given. They cried out with a loud voice, "Lord, the one who is holy and true, how long until you judge those who live on the earth and avenge our blood?" So they were each given a white robe, and they were told to rest a little while longer until the number would be completed of their fellow servants and their brothers and sisters who were going to be killed just as they had been. Then I saw him open the 6th seal. A violent earthquake occurred. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of hair. The entire moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its unripe figs when shaken by a high wind. The sky was split apart like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the nobles, the generals, the rich, the powerful, and every slave and free person hid in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and to the rocks, "Fall on us and hide from the face of the one who is seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" We have a couple of issues that we kind of need to address right away. If we're going to talk about Revelation being a Rorschach test, we need to talk about how so much of what we hear in sermons and in teaching today really take the book of Revelation and I feel do an injustice to who Jesus actually is. Some of the things that we hear taught on when it comes to the book of Revelation, they don't sound very, very Jesus-like. They don't sound like the Lamb. And so what we need to do is we need to strive to understand this maybe in a different way. And we can't interpret Revelation the same way we do every other book. And this is one of the things we're going to discover as we move through the book of Revelation, and why it's so important, I think, to take notes and to think about things that we've already talked about and try to come back to them as often as we can. And I can try to do that in teaching, but anyway, it's just helpful if we kind of take our own notes as we go. So the idea, though, is that when we come through Revelation, we don't read it in kind of this linear fashion. We don't read it from chapter 6 to chapter 20 as if these events are, then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, like we do the book of Acts or Matthew or anything else. That's not how Revelation is written. It's not intended to be understood that way. And if you approach Revelation and try to interpret it that way, it can lead us astray quite easily. Instead, we need to understand that there are images in chapter 6 that we're going to talk about again when we get into chapter 12 and 19 and so on and so forth. So we just kind of have to be cautious with that. And I'll do my best to kind of show us that as we go. And the other thing about this is, if we talk about the idea of the Rorschach test, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go today. If we talk about this, who do we believe Jesus actually is? Because the author of Hebrews tells us in Hebrews 13:8, the author of Hebrews says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Now, if that's true, if Jesus is the same yesterday and today and forever, then the Jesus we find in the Gospels, who dies on the cross and prays for those that put him there, that same Jesus is the Jesus we find in the book of Revelation. And if our interpretation of Revelation creates a vision of Jesus that is drastically different than that vision of Jesus, we might need to rethink our understanding of Revelation. And I hope to help us do that today. And hope to help us understand that the Jesus of the Gospels is the same Jesus we find in the book of Revelation. So, a couple of kind of general considerations that I want to take you. Just one is just kind of building off of that. When we approach Revelation, we need to have a cross-shaped vision of Revelation. We need to come at Revelation through our understanding of what Jesus did for the world on the cross, what the cross stands for, this idea that Jesus died and rose again for us. Like Revelation is his story. It is the unveiling of Jesus Christ. That's what Revelation is. It is the Apocrypha, that is the unveiling of Jesus Christ. And as we unveil Jesus Christ, if we unveil a Jesus who doesn't look like the Jesus we find in the Gospels, if he looks drastically different than that Jesus, we maybe need to rethink it. The other thing is, I just want to talk about this real quickly, but we'll see this more as we go along, that Revelation is a circular book. We find the seven seals, and we find the seven trumpets, and we find the seven bowls. These are not 21 separate things. This is kind of a circular thing. The first and second and third are the same as the first and second and third, right? The seal, the trumpet, the bowl. Like it's just expanding our understanding of what's going on in the stories we read it. So we'll kind of see that more as we go. We're not going to deal with that quite as much today, but it's just kind of a general understanding I feel like we need to take with us. But here's where we need to get this right, or we'll get everything else wrong, by answering this question. Who is the rider on the white horse? Many of you might have understood this the same way that I understood this many years in my youth and even as I grew into adulthood, that the rider on the white horse is obviously Jesus, because isn't the rider on the white horse Jesus? That's what we find in Revelation chapter 19, right? We find Jesus riding on the white horse, the one who is called faithful and true, the one who has the tattoo on his leg that reads King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That Jesus is riding on a white horse, and he has crowned on his head. Is this not the same Jesus? We find this Jesus riding on a white horse. He's got a crown. Is this not Jesus? But if this is Jesus, that's a problematic approach to this passage. Because if Jesus is the one who is going out into the world to conquer by way of the bow, by way of violence, and leading forth the way for these other riders on the horses, on the black, on the red, and on the pale horse, the ones who bring death and destruction and poverty, is that really the Jesus we find of the Gospels? Is this the same Jesus? I don't think it is. And so maybe this isn't Jesus. And actually, when we begin to dig a little deeper, we find some stark differences between the rider on the white horse in Revelation chapter 6 and the rider on the white horse in Revelation chapter 19. For one, Revelation chapter 6 depicts the rider on the white horse wearing a crown. Does the rider on the white horse in Revelation 19 have a crown? He does not. He has many crowns. As a matter of fact, the rider on the white horse in Revelation chapter 6 is given a crown. We'll talk about that in a minute. Revelation 19, Jesus is not given a crown. No one gives Jesus a crown. Jesus earned the crown through the death and resurrection that's how he earned the crown. That's what Philippians teaches us, that it was by becoming man and by taking on this death and the resurrection. That's how he earned the right to sit beside his Father. That's Jesus. No one gave Jesus the crown. Jesus earned his many crowns. But actually, that word crowns is really important. Because in Revelation chapter 6 and in Revelation chapter 19, the Greek for crown is different. In Revelation chapter 6, the Greek word for crown is the word Stephanos. It means a crown of victory. A crown where you go out and you win a battle over your enemies, which is what the rider on the white horse is getting ready to go out. He can go out and conquer. So he's given a crown to symbolize his victory over his enemies. But the rider on the white horse in Revelation 19 doesn't go out and wear a Stephanos. He wears many diadems. That's the royal crowns that he wears. The language is important. We'll discover the beast wearing diadems later, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But for now, I want you to note that the rider on the white horse in Revelation chapter 6 is wearing a distinctly different type of crown that he's given, not that he's earned. Also, the rider on the white horse in Revelation chapter 6 carries a weapon. What weapon does he carry? The bow. The military weapon. What does Jesus carry in Revelation 19? He doesn't have a bow. He has a sword that comes out of his mouth, because what is it? It is the word of truth. It is the word that speaks truth into falsehood. It is about tearing down deception. Maybe this is where we discover who this rider in Revelation chapter 6 is. Maybe it's not Jesus. Maybe it's one who wants us to believe that he's Jesus. He's a deceiver. Actually, let's talk about that a little further. By asking this next question, so is then this one who is going out and conquering, let's say it's not Jesus, but isn't his conquering still the will of God? Is this not what he's going out to do, going out to conquer the enemies of God? Well, actually, is conquering God's will? The death and destruction that's about to come forth when these seals are broken, is that what God is looking for? Is this God's will? Well, God does say come, right? One of the living creatures who represent the human life, so to speak, and the animal kingdom and so forth. These creatures that speak on behalf of God, they say come. Doesn't God want him to come and bring this conquering justice? Maybe this word come means something different, actually. It's very often Scripture and in other places, even in our own lives, sometimes when we say come, we mean like come here, like come on, come do your thing. Maybe that's what he meant, but maybe actually it's something very different. Maybe this come is more about revealing yourself. Instead, I think how we see this is that God is saying to the rider on the white horse, come expose who you really are. You're trying to deceive. You're trying to bring about injustice in the world, and I'm about to expose this. Remember what Revelation is. Revelation is the unveiling of Jesus Christ, and it is also the unveiling of the work of light and darkness that is going on in the world all around us. John is being taken up into heaven so that he can look down on earth and he can see what's going on earth from heaven's perspective. If he's going to be able to see what's going on from heaven's perspective, the things that are going on in the world need to be exposed. And so God says to the one who rides on the white horse, expose yourself. The one on the rider on the black horse, expose yourself. Show us who you really are. Show us who is causing the death and destruction and poverty in the world. This isn't brought to us by God. This is brought to us by the riders on the horses, the ones who work under the subjugation of the beast, of the dragon. And so God says to them, come out. Let's see who you really are. Is this not what Jesus said to Judas? Judas, you hide among the disciples. You sit here in the upper room. But what you are about to do quickly. Come on, Judas. Let's do your thing. Let's stop trying to hide amongst my followers. You riders on the horses, stop trying to pretend like the death and destruction and these evil things are happening because God wills them. Instead, expose yourself and expose what's truly going on. Of course, the crown was given to them, to this rider on the white horse. Is the crown given to him by God? I think we can safely say that it was not. Revelation chapter 13 tells us how he gained this crown. The dragon gave the beast his power, his throne, and great authority. In verse 5 of Revelation 13, it says, the beast was given a mouth to utter boasts and blasphemies. It was allowed to exercise authority. Who gives authority on earth to deceive, to destroy, to conquer? Well, that's Satan. Satan tried to give that to Jesus. Do you remember in the temptation in the wilderness when Jesus is tempted by Satan? What does Satan say to him? You know, all these kingdoms on the earth, they all belong to me. I can give them to you if you want. They're all under my authority. Jesus doesn't counter Satan. The authority of these things is given to him, so certainly he can give the authority to go and conquer and to bring death and devastation to the worlds. There's one more point I want to make real quick here. I'm going to try not to take too much longer. At the end of the chapter, we have this interesting picture where we see these people of the earth. I'll just read it to you. The kings of the earth, the nobles, the generals, the rich, the powerful, and every slave and free person hid in the caves and among the rocks. They said to the mountains, the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? The great day of the wrath of the Lamb has come. We need to be afraid of the Lamb, do we not? Do we not need to fear the Lamb? It's ridiculous. Is this what Jesus desires of people? That when we are confronted by the Lamb, that we run in fear? It's fascinating as you read through the book of Revelation that the kings of the earth and all of these people, who do they worship? Who do they buddy up with? The great dragon, the beasts, the ones who come to conquer and to devastate and to destroy. Who do they run from? The Lamb. Actually, The Greek suggests it's a little lamb. What's going on here? You see, so many Christians have interpreted this as the rider on the white horse is Jesus, and he's coming out and he's destroying all these people, and he's wiping out all of his enemies, and he's bringing death and destruction and poverty on all these people who've chosen to walk away from him, and they need to be afraid of him. But is this the Jesus of the cross? Actually, what John is doing here is he's being comical. He's writing this in order that we would look at this and we would go, wait a minute, what? All the people, the powerful people of this world, they're running and hiding in fear of a little lamb? Nobody's afraid of a little lamb. You see, when Jesus first appears in Revelation chapter 5, do you remember what happens? The Lion of Judah. And I turned and looked, and there was a lamb. And everywhere else in the book of Revelation, from this point on, when Jesus is referred to, he is referred to as the Lamb. He's never again a lion in the book of Revelation. Instead, he is many times referred to as the Lamb. Why? Because we're supposed to understand that he's not one that we run away from. He is instead one that we fall down and worship, because he is the Lamb who was slaughtered and gave his life for us. So often, we fear the very one we're supposed to love, and we love the very one we're supposed to fear, because we've been deceived. Just like the people in Revelation have been deceived and run from the Lamb and want to hide from his wrath. We don't hide from the Lamb. The Lamb doesn't come in wrath, he comes in love. He comes as one who's been slaughtered on our behalf. I'm going to wrap this up here. But I just want to ask that question then. How does this change? You can imagine how much this drastically alters everything we take from this point on in the book of Revelation. If we understand from the beginning of Revelation chapter 6, if we take Jesus as the one who goes out to conquer and defeat and destroy his foes, or we understand Jesus as the Lamb who was slain so that we might be saved. Those are two very different ways to approach the book of Revelation. And let me tell you, we will approach this with a cross-shaped vision. All right, I'm going to end it there. We'll pick this up again next week. We'll talk further about Revelation. We're going to have some fun. Again, if you want to have a conversation about this in the comment section, please do that. But also, if you want to join us at the table next week, please do that as well. Look forward to seeing you next time if you're able, and look forward to having this ongoing conversation about how we approach Revelation with a cross-shaped vision. All right, thanks a lot. God bless.